Hey, we're about to start the show in just a second, but towards the end of the video, I found out she has a really cool free downloadable for you guys. So watch to the end of the video, and you'll find out how to get basically a $10,000 downloadable, like free from her on how to do all this hiring stuff yourself, okay? So hang on to the end of the video, okay? Okay, good. All right, hi, everybody. It's John Nesbitt with $1 Million Practice Builders again, and I have, as usual, a phenomenal show for you today. This is going to be one of those super practical, get a cup of coffee, get a piece of paper, write some notes down kind of shows. Because we're talking, as you see, the title is all about building that $1 million practice team. I've seen a lot of $1 million practices, and they all have one thing in common. They have a lot of people who are trained and know how to work as a team there. You never see too many doctors running things, like maybe answering their own phones and changing the toilet paper rolls in their own office and everything else and doing all the treatment and everything else. You can't really build $1 million team practice that way. So what I did is I went out and I found an expert for you guys in actually practice building, and someone who knows how to build a team the right way, the first time, every time. It's an amazing process that they have. And my guest here, you see her there on the screen here, is Nicole Nadler. And she is a raving expert at practice building. And I'm really happy. Thank you for being on the show today. And letting us pick your brain and, have some wow moments on how to, basically build our dream practices. So you want to tell us a little about your background? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nicole Nadler. I'm a business consultant. I would say of my, 46 private coaching clients I have right now, at least 90% of them are private healthcare practitioners. So I see a lot of doctors, and one thing I have found over the years of working with them is that they went to medical school. They did not go to business school. So, maybe someday we'll change that and I'll be out of job, but that's okay with me. I'd rather they thrive than,
there's specialties in life,
I'm sure
right?
There'll still be something for me to do at that point. But for now, this is what I enjoy doing. It's my passion. You asked for my background. So when I was, 14, I started my first business. It was a little side hustle, cleaning houses for my parents' friends. And, everything was going along great. And then one day my father, who's the business owner, said, Sarah, you don't have to do all the work yourself. And so I recruited one of my fellow high schoolers to clean the houses for me. And I did the marketing and I did the sales and I managed the business and kept a little bit in my pocket and paid her a grown-up's wage. I was very proud of myself. I've always been an advocate for paying a living wage to people. And I can honestly say I started at 14. And that went along pretty well until I graduated high school. And I was all set to go to college, and my sister was diagnosed with cancer that year. And so with nothing but a high school education, I knew the only way I was going to support my family and myself was to make that business make money. So that was my, sink or swim introduction into the business world. And years later, when I went back to school to become a business consultant, I really learned a lot of things that I wish I'd known in those early days. So I take a lot of pleasure out of teaching people what I wish I had known the first time I bought a business. And it's been a lot of fun, many, many years of helping entrepreneurs.
Great. And now you find yourself specializing in healthcare, and you've built dozens and dozens of practices. You don't look like the typical grizzled veteran with the $3,000 suit and the pinky ring and all.
Where's my eye patch, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't want our viewers to be deceived that you personally have helped. You have 40 something clients right now. Most business consultants don't manage to keep their clients like that. They don't have that kind of success or enough to teach them. And you're helping these guys all build $1 million practices. They're helping them grow and grow and grow. So let's talk about the team aspect of that. So you've got some hot ideas on how to hire the right people, I assume, right? And how to make them into a loyal team. Because when we did the research, we found that docs, they want competent, loyal team members that they can depend on and not have to always be correcting or replacing or getting frustrated and mad at, and should I fire them or just deal with them? Some people have to just put up with bad staff. I've seen actually several of our clients, they're doing great, but they can't keep the staffing on. We've literally, that's actually not uncommon for us to lose a client only because they lost a key employee and had no idea how to replace them. And so they almost have to close their business
Right.
much less keep marketing. So I like to kind of speak to those kind of points. Like, all right, let's tell us just right. How do you find good staff, especially these days? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, it feels like it's impossible sometimes.
What you just pointed out is, I think, the biggest barrier we run into. So let me step back for a second. To your point, I know one of the questions you asked me before we started today was, what are some of the biggest objections people have to signing up for coaching? And for me, I know it's not the same for, middle-aged male consultants. But for me, one of the biggest objections I hear is, you look young. What on earth do you know about building a business? Well, I'll tell you right now. And in fact, I'm really excited about this because last week, just last week, 2 of my clients hit $1 million in their practice for the first time.
2 in the same
this
week.
year. They've made $1 million this year, since January, right? And they've
Wow.
never hit $1 million in a year before. They've already hit it. So yes, I build practices. Yes, I know how to build a team. And yes, the biggest barrier to hiring the right person is the limiting beliefs that the practice owner has about hiring. Case in point, if you listen to the media right now, we're having a hiring crisis in America. But I helped, of the 46 clients I have right now, I think probably a third to half are hiring right now, and I helped them hire 11 staff in the last month.
Wow.
So it's not true that, sure, it is more difficult now than it was, say, in 2020 when everything was closed and everybody wanted a job, right? It is more difficult, but the first thing you have to overcome is this belief that you can't get good staff. And that is actually, limiting beliefs is actually a passion of mine. I consider myself a business and balance coach. Help people not just build their business, but build a business that allows you to step away from that business and go live your life. My husband and I, we just relocated out here to Florida, sunny Florida, because we wanted to see the beach. We wanted to be able to work from anywhere, and we've accomplished that. And I tell my business owners, I don't want you working 40, 60 hours in your practice, as a practitioner and as a manager and as an owner. There's 3 different roles. I want you wearing the ones you enjoy, and I want to teach you how to delegate the other ones. And that does start with realizing that not only can you hire great staff, because they are out there, there's plenty of employee and people willing to be employed in America, but you also deserve that person. And sometimes we have to do a little bit of work around the limiting beliefs the business owner has about how it's impossible to hire and everybody's horrible and there's nobody but lazy people out there and I don't deserve good staff, right? Because of this and that and how horrible you are as a manager. And none of that is true. None of that is true. I've met bad managers, and most of the time it's like I said, they went to doctor school. I tell my clients, your education failed you. It's not really your fault. As long as you're willing to look at your behavior and willing to change your management technique where it's required, you're not a bad manager and you can get good staff. As you can see, I've got a bit of a soapbox on the topic because it's something I've heard again and again recently, and it's just not true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to have the limiting beliefs is a very interesting thing. I have it in a slightly different way. We had a client at 2 different offices, and they're about 8 miles apart. And one day, the one office says, "Oh yeah, the numbers are bad and everything else because it's raining outside and people don't want to come in." And the other office had their highest ever day. And the only difference was the attitude. It wasn't different weather. It wasn't in the same state, everything. It was just different attitudes about the approach to the overall thing they're doing. And that makes all the difference. Okay, good. Well, that's okay, good. So more than even just the tactical, how do you do, what does the ad say and all that, you've got all that down, but also how to actually make it possible that it can happen without the self-limiting beliefs.
Right. Yeah, I have a 3-step framework that I use when I work with clients, and we basically tackle 3 main topics, and I call it the CEO mindset. CEO in this case doesn't stand for Chief Executive Officer. It actually stands for control of your practice, right? Setting expectations correctly, and then exceeding the expectations of your clients, and then organizing how to make it happen. And at the end of the day, those are the 3 things you need to run any business. And so I tell them, you can have this attitude of what I call defeatism. Defeatism is the attitude that you can't control something. And in my experience, that's 90% of the time untrue. It's true you can't control the weather, but you can certainly control the amount of outflow you're doing, right? The amount of call in, the amount of recall or reactivation of past patients you're doing. You can control so many things about your traffic, about everything else. So whenever there's an attitude of defeatism, I always tell my clients, take a look at, what skill set could I acquire, which if I had, would make it possible for me to control this outcome. And when we make that mental shift, you'll start to see some pretty miraculous things happen. So I will get into the tactical a little bit on hiring because I want this to be of value to you guys, but I also want your listeners to really think about that. If there's some area that you're feeling defeated in your practice, pause for a moment
any area
and think.
practice.
What was that?
So like any area, so you could actually apply this little framework you had to anything.
Oh, yeah.
So you had 99 problems in your practice, pick one out, and you could apply this framework to that.
Absolutely. Take a look and think to yourself, what skill set, right? Like if I were amazing at talking to people, that would put me in control of that outcome. Or if I could close anybody who walks through my, door as a salesperson, would that solve this? And figure out what is that skill set and then do some CE around that, right? Like go actually acquire that skill set and you'll see that outcome come back under your control, right?
Right. Now, some guys will say, well, sometimes you're just not a natural talker. Some people just can't acquire some skills. Do you ever run across that? Well, I'm just not a good closer. I'm really good at education, but I'm just not a closer. I'm not Grant Cardone, whatever, right? What do you say to that kind of objection?
I'll tell you the honest truth. What I tell them is I'm not a natural chiropractor. And then they remember that they went to school for 10 years to learn that skill, right? Some of my clients are veterinarians and I joke with them. I'm like, yeah, just imagine if someone brought their dog to me, that poor dog, Right. I think there is something to be said for natural talent, but I'll tell you a funny thing right now, John. When I was a teenager, my mother used to try to convince me to talk to strangers by telling me I could have pizza, which was my favorite food. What teenager doesn't love pizza, right?
Sure.
If I would order it myself. I never had pizza. I was a complete introvert for my entire young adult life. And it was only when I went out and actually started taking classes on communication and, did the public speaking and things like that. It's an acquired skill. And now look at me. I mean, you can't shut me up half the time, right?
Yeah, I would never think of you as an introvert. That's the last thing I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, but I was nose deep in a book all through high school and never talked to strangers, right?
Wow.
So, I hate to say it, but I'm a little bit of a difficult person to give excuses to.
That's pretty good for the line of work you're in.
I think you need that sometimes though, right? We all need a little bit of a kick in the butt to remind us that every skill you have now, you've practiced. Even the ones you were born with innately, practice makes them perfect, right?
Yeah, well, I think for what you do, that's a pretty good skill because a certain amount of not buying, because the reason people, I think, like I see practices who are across the street from each other, who have similar skill levels, similar experience levels, same market, same opportunity, and one guy is struggling and the other guy isn't. And I think the reason the one guy is struggling is he's bought all his own excuses. Right. He's built a little world for himself where nothing can be done about it. And he just lives in that little world and complains. And the guy across the street must be a criminal or must be a scam artist or something. There's no way he could be having that many patients and really doing that. And the guy across the street has just basically gotten over some of his problems there. Okay. Wow. Okay. This got a lot wider than hiring real fast, didn't it? But I see how if you think you're not like, what is it? If you think you can and you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But it comes deeper than that. I mean, we all have no good staff. Root causes for our beliefs, right? The belief is really just the symptom. Usually there's a root cause underneath why you believe that. And that's why I became a certified life coach. That's why I became knowledgeable about the mind and how it works, what makes people tick, because I wanted to be able to help my clients be accountable to their goals. And I think that's honestly, it causes a lot of dishonesty in my industry. You see all these coaching programs out there that have no guarantee around them, and they blatantly tell you that it's up to you whether you get any results and all this nonsense. We don't do that here because I know I can hold my clients accountable and actually help them overcome the things, internal or external, that are stopping them from hitting $1 million or more in their practice.
Wow. Okay. I think I just got a glimpse into your secret sauce here, because almost everybody can kind of figure out what they should be doing, but they just don't do it. And you're the one who helps to actually get them to actually do the thing they should have been doing all this time to make the things better. Aha, I'm on to you. That's what you do.
You're on to me. It's true. And the truth is, too, that it's an enjoyable experience for the client. And I think that's what a lot of people fear, right? They go, oh, you're going to make me do this. I don't think I want someone nagging me all the time. I don't need to nag, right? Because you want that goal. All you need is someone who knows how to get there and can instill confidence in you enough that you will make yourself do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there dragging a screaming child across the mall. That's not my coaching style.
Well, you know what? A little extra courage from somebody else goes a long way, though. I mean, you got to go do something that's a little out of your comfort zone. Maybe you have to interview people for hiring. Like, I know docs who don't even, they are terrified really of interviewing anybody. What I say the wrong thing? What special questions am I supposed to ask? And they have all these, they get so complex about it. But having someone say, no, here's how you do it. You'll be fine. Go ahead and do it. Oh, you didn't do it quite right. Okay, let's fix that up and get you back on and fix it next time, Having that kind of help goes a long way. I mean, that's the key to how I grow my own business. No one does this stuff alone. You get help. Okay, good. So, okay, wow, we really opened a big. I feel like we're doing an 8-hour show here, but I want to do that to everybody. All right. So let's get down to building a loyal team. So hiring and building a loyal team is what we promised in the title. We found a whole other area here, but let's move from that just a little bit and give them some nuts and bolts stuff they can do without having to have you whispering in their ear. What they can do to have successful hiring.
Yeah. So the first thing I do with a client when we're trying to hire is, of course, as a business consultant, I help them figure out whether or not they can afford the type of person they're trying to hire, right? So there is a bit of financial planning that goes into that. We look at the profits, we look at how much payroll is now if they have employees already, and we really figure out what can I afford to pay, what can I afford to offer. And then we do a little bit of competitor research and we find out what are people paying in the area so we can make sure we're competitive, right? The other thing, though, we do, which I find a lot of people forget to do, is writing down the core values of the business so that we make sure we attract the right person, right? Because it's not just, are we a good fit for them financially? It's, are they a good fit for us? Are they going to mesh well with your other staff? And in some cases...
Give me an idea what those kind of values are like. Like, I mean, everybody, I want to hire a person who's punctual and awesome and honest and, loves our patients. I mean, it seems a little kind of specious. Give me some example of that.
That's a really great point. I find oftentimes business owners, especially practice owners, where again, we didn't go to business school, don't really understand what a core value really means. So let's break that down for a second. A core value is something you innately believe that causes your own activities. For example, I have quite a few clients who are religious. They're Christian or they have their own religious beliefs, and those beliefs, they affect the way they treat their staff. They want they want staff who have Christian values, even if they don't care whether their staff are Christian. They still want their staff to be honest and to be compassionate. And it's based on their own personal beliefs, right? Now, you can also go too far with that and be discriminatory. So we have a fine line we have to draw here, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, what do you believe? And what does your already existing culture, company culture, what does it stand by? And a great example of this is the subject of compassion, right? In 2020 alone, we had clients who were having to furlough their staff. They were having to, let them go and things like that. And some of my practice owners had to take a step back and go, wait a minute, what are my core beliefs? One of them, for instance, had a gal who was actually genuinely terrified about coming back to work. She had, been listening to all the news. She knew the statistics. It wasn't unrealistic for her to be scared, right? She wasn't faking it. She wasn't being lazy. She was actually a very productive, helpful team member who was quite scared of coming back. And so this owner decided, because her core belief is compassion, that she was going to allow her team member to stay furloughed until she was ready to come back. And months later, she eventually reached back out. And in the meanwhile, the practice, had to deal with things without her and actually ended up hiring someone part-time to replace her temporarily. But the point is that decision was based on a core value, right? So when we look at who we want to hire, you have to look first at yourself as a business owner and think, what company culture do I want to build here, right? What do I want the core beliefs of my employees to be? Or if I have a really good team, maybe even doing a survey. I'm a big sucker for surveys. I survey the employees all the time to find out what they think, what direction do they think we should be going? Doesn't mean the business owner has to go that direction, but it's good to know what they think so you can help guide them, right? So we do that kind of exercise and really nail down what are the things we can't live without. Because here's an interesting statistic. Women looking at a hiring ad, if we don't have at least 99% of the qualities that are being asked for, we won't even apply. Whereas a man, just by statistics, is more likely to apply for that job, even if he has, say, 60 to 70% of the qualities being asked. So it's important not to put specious or unnecessary qualities in your hiring ad, because you'll actually filter out some really amazing people who just happen to have a little bit of self-doubt.
Wow.
Right?
So people are
about their
running
own
ads and they're
capabilities.
running these long ads. Like, okay, must be this. You think you're being awesome because you're being specific,
Right.
but you're people forcing people to self-filter themselves out that would be totally acceptable to you.
Exactly. And so we actually have a hiring process that does the filtering for you. But in order for that process to work, you have to have a large pool of applicants. So we say hire and put in your hiring ad the bare bones minimum of qualities that they need, so that, like obviously if the person has to have a certain certification, put that in there. But don't go on a whole roll about their personality, because you're going to use the hiring process to discover their personality. On the flip side, a truly toxic person would absolutely click on that ad. So you're basically filtering out all the really good people and attracting all the bad ones who are willing to lie to
so
you.
It must be honest. And the honest person, I go, well, I'm not always honest, so they wouldn't apply. And the really dishonest will go, oh, I could fake honesty,
Right, exactly. So those types of hiring ads tend to A, get you less applicants, and B, give you the worst applicants. So it's better to just put the bare bones minimum of what you actually need this person to be and use our system, which I'm going to teach you guys. Don't worry, I'm not holding anything back, in order to actually filter out toxicity.
Wow, that is awesome, because I know a lot of people say, well, I'm running ads, I'm not getting anybody to sign up, or I'm getting the wrong people in, but okay, I'll be more specific with the ad, which actually makes it worse.
Right. Yep, it does.
I love finding out stuff like that. Okay, good. So keep it simple in the ads is awesome. Okay, good. Do tell. What's the next part? What's the filtering process?
So before we even get to the filtering, let's talk about that ad for one more minute and where you place it. I hear a lot of business owners who are saying, I'm running an ad, but what they mean is they put a single ad on Indeed. So John, tell me what happens when we run one single ad on one platform.
Not much.
Yeah. These days,
You're
because
invisible with
it's
everybody
really
else.
a buyer's market when it comes to jobs, we have to take a marketing approach to the way you attract candidates. So put that ad on Indeed, sure, but also put it on, Monster, also put it on Facebook, also put a pop-up or a banner on your website that says we're hiring, check out our careers page, right? One of the things we do is we give them a template for how to create a careers page, because name one private practice that's got a careers page. But that's a key part of helping people figure out what it's really going to be like to work for you. Because these days, especially if you're trying to attract a millennial or younger, they're a lot more interested in what it's really like to work there. Is their boss mean, right? That kind of thing, than they are necessarily even about the paycheck. We make assumptions all the time that candidates are looking for the highest paying job, but what they're really looking for is the best culture fit, the place they're going to feel comfortable and they're going to feel like they're amongst their peers. So if they don't see that, if they don't see staff pictures on your website, if they don't see a careers page that really is inviting and tells them how wonderful it is to work there, you're missing out on a huge, huge, huge opportunity to attract the best candidates. Because the best candidates know know they're the best candidates, and they're going to go looking for the best team to be a part of.
Yeah, they have options. You're right. Yeah, I guess that's why you see some folks get stuck in the trap of, well, I heard the best place to hire is my patient base or friends of friends, because they are the ones who know you, right? But
Right.
if you communicate that effectively in your ad, like what's our values? What do we believe in here? Yeah, I believe that I've seen some research not that long ago that people, especially millennials and the younger workers, the purpose of the place where they work is actually very important, not just the income, but know that they're making the world a better place, that they're participating in something larger. And with healthcare, that's easy. We help sick people get better. Wow. We help people walk again. We people, enjoy their life, pick up their grandkids.
Yeah.
You can probably hit those purposes and communicate that easily to them. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. What's the next step? How do we? Okay. Now, all right. We got an ad that just got me everybody in the world in front of me. What do I do now?
So the next
look
thing,
for typos on resumes, or what am I doing?
So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to drown in resumes. And here's how you resolve that, okay? We're actually going to put together a group interview. Now, here's the trick with the group interview. There's two things you have to know. First of all, we don't want to tell them it's a group interview, because part of what we're trying to do is filter out those who can't handle pressure. If the person doesn't do well under pressure, they're probably not going to do well in a healthcare practice, right? They might do okay in a really well-established dental practice where they get to leave by 3 p.m., right? And it's all really calm and quiet there. But typically a healthcare practice can be a very lively place to work. And we don't always go every single week without overtime, right? Right. It's just a reality of the healthcare profession, which hopefully someday we'll be able to change. But for now, it's important to be able to attract people who can deal with that, so you don't have high turnover. So how in a job interview are you going to create pressure, right? Without being rude or discriminatory or getting sued. One of the best ways is to do a group interview and not tell them that it's going to be a group interview. So you tell them, look, I'm only available for interviews between such and such time on this one day, right? Make it a day that you don't have patients. Can be a weekend or it can be an evening. Obviously, you're going to have to invest a little bit of extra time into doing this, but believe me, the few hours you put into that job interview that you're doing one time with everybody, it's going to cut you down so many hours of poring over job interviews.
One after another is just, it disrupts your whole life when you're hiring that way.
Yeah, it really is a huge disruption of your entire life. So all you have to do is just wait a few days while those ads send you resumes, check them over, and you're going to put them in two categories. The I don't think so category, and the I want to invite this person to the job interview category. Red flags you're looking for on the resume are things like job hopping all the time, doesn't have any background in what you're trying to hire them for, right? Maybe I often also require a cover letter. So read the cover letter, at least the first sentence if you've got 100 resumes to go through, and just make sure it sounds like this person can read and write and, is able to put sentences together logically. So that's all you're doing with the resume. It should take 1 minute to 2 minutes per resume, right? So if you have 100 resumes, that's 100 minutes. That's maybe a little more than an hour and a half, but fine. It's not breaking the bank or destroying your life now, right? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take that stack of all the yeses on the resumes, and you're going to just call each one. This is the part that gets a little bit time consuming because you're going to want to spend between 5 and 10 minutes on the phone with that person. And all you're doing is, one, convincing them to come to the interview, right? And two, you're listening to their tone of voice. Tone of voice can tell you a lot about a person. We really can help us define their emotional state, how interested they seem. Do they sound like they're lying in bed going, yeah, I'm interested, right? They couldn't even be bothered to sit up and talk to you, right? Or do they sound genuinely like someone who has a little bit of life in them, right? That's all we're looking for, just a little bit of life. They got a little bit of pizzazz there and they sound interested and they can string 2 sentences together, right? If they pass that test, then you invite them to come for the job interview. You tell them that you'll be meeting them there, and you don't mention anything about the fact that it's a group interview. That, like I said, 5-10 minutes per resume. Hopefully at this point, you're down to about 30 resumes. So that could be a little bit time consuming, but it's worth it because it will, again, give you a good sense for this person, right?
Yeah.
Now they all show up at the job interview. There's one thing you need to have there when everybody shows up, and that is a mole. So what's a mole? A mole is a spy. A mole is an employee who already works for you, who you trust, or it can be your spouse, can be your cousin, right? Cousin Vinny, whoever you want. But this person's job is to show up dressed like an applicant, pretend they're an applicant, not lie to anybody, but just, sit around and be quiet and listen and observe. And all they're supposed to do is see how the other applicants behave when you're not in the room. Because here's what's going to happen, right? John, you're the business owner. I'm an applicant. You come in, you tell everybody to do something. And as you leave, I go, man, he's kind of chubby, right? I'm the toxic employee, right? Bingo, you just filtered out the most toxic person who could possibly have joined your business, right? Yeah, so that's the mole's entire job. So what you do is you have everybody come in. I'm going to teach you the process, but as you go through them, one by one, you're going to be interviewing all these people. But you leave the mole for last, so that the mole can be there for everybody, see everything, and at the end, give you their own assessment. The mole doesn't even have to be an incredible manager or anything like that. All they have to do is just tell you if there's anything toxic that happened in the room while you weren't there, right? Somebody being nasty or trying to put people down or convince someone that they aren't good for the job or anything like that, right? That's their sole job in this job interview. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to pass around some paperwork. You're just going to tell everybody you want them to fill it out. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. We're going to put them through a couple more filters here, okay? One of the things you want to have them fill out is have them write a collection letter to a patient who has not paid their bill. It's going to do a couple things for you, right? First of all, it's really hard to train staff who are illiterate. If they can't read and write, we still love them. They might be great people, but they're going to be hard to train. Right? They're not going to be fast getting through CE. They're not going to be able to read policies and standard operating procedures and job description manuals and things like that. So by having them write a letter, we can see how literate they are. I don't care about handwriting. We can solve handwriting. We have computers, right? But can they string words together and make them make sense? The other thing we're looking for is how would this person treat a patient who had misbehaved, right? Are they going to be nasty and give us the money? Or are they going to be able to be professional, right? So that's a really great filter right there. You tell them, I want you to fill this out, even if the position has nothing to do with collecting money. We just want to see how you would write a letter, right? The other thing you're going to ask them to do, and this is another filter, is we're going to have the business owner come into the room for just a couple minutes, and he or she is going to say 3 things. They're going to say who they are, right? And they're going to say something unique about this practice is blah, blah, blah. Something about the position you're being looked at for is the purpose, the purpose of the position you're looking at is blah, blah, blah. And here's something unique about our practice, blah, 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 right? Then he's going to leave the room and another piece of paper is going to be passed around and it's going to ask, what's something unique about this practice? What is the purpose of the position you're being hired for, right? Again, what we're filtering for here is something called duplication. A person who cannot repeat back to you what you just said 2 minutes ago, either one, they weren't paying attention. Why would you not pay attention when the owner of the business you're applying for came in the room and talked to you? Or 2, they actually have a problem with duplication, which means that when you give them direction, when you give them orders, when you try to teach them standard operating procedures, this person's going to struggle. They're going to jump on the struggle bus and they're never going to get off. They don't know which exit to take, right? So we use these filters, but can you see how they don't really seem like filters, right? They don't really seem
so
like
you got a lot of people there. You got rid of the toxic people. Right, in the first filter, you got rid of the ones who just don't have the basic skills to write and communicate, or who communicate in a weird or gruff or a way you don't want your patients to be treated. Right, and now you've gotten rid of people who basically you can't train.
Right.
So leaves you with the trainable, non-toxic, skilled people.
That's right.
I can see that. That's pretty good.
And now we do, since they're already there in the room, now we do a 10-minute interview on each one. By this point, you've already kind of figured out who's the best candidates, and you can spend a little bit of more time with those people. But this is where you're going to start asking one-on-one questions. You're going to have them in a private room and do your thing, right?
Perfect.
Now, a little bit of preparatory work for this. Now, when you're a part of our coaching program, we have forms for all these things. So we just give you the forms. You can put your logo on the top if you want, and you use our forms. But you will want to create forms if you don't have them for those different things, so you're prepared, right? You'll also want to prepare your interview questions. So let's talk about interview questions for a second, because unless you have a background in HR, this is where a lot of hiring goes wrong. Not knowing how to actually conduct a job interview. Because even if they've come through all those filters, we've filtered out the obvious toxic people, but there's one type of personality we haven't filtered yet. And that is the most toxic person. Because the most toxic person is really skilled at one thing. They are really skilled at pulling the wool over your eyes. That's why they've gotten as far as they have. The super toxic people in society who are not skilled at that are in jail by the time they're in their 20s,
well,
right?
It's easy to see those guys. I know what you mean. Somebody who's kind of a nasty person, it's kind of easy to tell.
Yeah.
Someone who's kind of like that smarmy, oh, no, I'm on your side. Yeah, I love chiropractic. You guys almost never break necks. It's awesome, right?
They will make up lies. They will make up whole stories, right? Whole fabric stories to tell you about how they saved this guy's life at the last practice and this and that. And it's all very, very believable. Okay. So that process we just walked through is not going to filter that. So I'll tell you in a minute how we actually discover those people, but we got to get through the job interview first. And before you walk into the job interview, you want to have written down a list of good questions to ask, right? Now, what are we trying to do in a job interview? When we're doing a one-on-one, there's a couple of things we're trying to actually accomplish here. Obviously, one, we want to find out what skills this person has. So you need to ask questions around, okay, have you ever, drawn blood? Have you ever cracked someone's back? Have you, right? Like these things that the person is expected to do. We want to maybe test them a little bit on their skill sets. You might want to consider a working interview for someone like a receptionist where she actually has to answer the phone, right? That type of thing. But we also are trying to get the person to talk and move so we can find their emotional state. Because remember, I said at the beginning, your emotional state says so much about your behavior, right? So watch the way they act. Watch what their eyes do when they answer a question. Can they look you in the eyes? If they can't look you in the eyes, they're not going to be able to look a patient in the eyes, right? So we really want to watch the body language and watch their behavior. And here's the key to a good job interview when you're doing the one-on-one is make them talk more than you. Ask a question, and if they give you a monosyllabic answer, ask a secondary question, right? Ask for clarification around an answer. Don't be afraid to stick on a question until you really feel like you got it answered, right? Sometimes you'll stump them. Sometimes they won't know the answer. Sit there quietly until they figure it out, right? That also gives you some clue. It's like, well, how long does it take this guy to come up with an answer? But at the end of the day, if you fill that vacuum, if you fill that empty space in the room with more questions, you're blowing by the whole point of the job interview, which is to get that person to talk and move around so you can observe their behavior, right?
Yes, you have to get them to do enough to reveal themselves.
That's
to
right.
You, right?
Exactly.
Even has to sit there quietly and just sort of like, yeah, okay, and kind of slide by yes, no questions. But if you're going to start telling you about things, then you're going to be able to tell.
That's right. The other thing you want to do is only ask open-ended questions, right? Don't ever ask questions that make it obvious what the correct answer is. A good example of this, again, in our lovely healthcare profession, is the question around overtime, right? Like, don't ask the person, are you okay with overtime? Instead, ask it like this. Can you describe for me circumstances where you would and would not be willing to do overtime? Right? So now they have to come up with reasons they wouldn't be and reasons they would. And then you can, of course, hold them to that later as well. So
okay, good.
That's a great example of a closed versus an open method of asking the same question. So really have a think around the things you want to know about this person and then find ways to make them tell a story about it. Another good one that I like to use in a job interview is, tell me a story about a time when you made a mistake at work and how you handled it.
Mm.
Right?
Well,
So
humility there. Yeah.
yeah. Now, remembering, of course, that a good person feels remorse for their actions. So they should start to feel a bit uncomfortable and look a little bit uncomfortable while they tell you this time. If they rattle it off and tell you how they solved it and it was all just a magic wand and it was wonderful, you might be looking at a toxic person, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because
that's one of those questions you actually don't want them to be able to answer perfectly with a pat answer.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah. I see. Because some people are a little nutty like that. Oh, wow. Yeah. I made a little mistake, but then I saved the world. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Where a real person feels some ups. Yeah. Because everybody makes some mistakes, So
That's right.
great. Okay. Good. So we've got the right person. We've had our crazy person detector, the trained liar, basically,
Yep.
as you basically found them out. Okay, good. Are you in favor of doing any kind of testing or any kind of you mentioned work interviews. How do you know you got the right person at the end of this process?
Good. So we put them through individual, interviews, and now we have everybody go away. We don't tell anyone whether they have or have not been chosen at this stage. We just let them know, you know what, we'll let you know as soon as possible. You'll either get a job offer or a rejection letter. We never leave people hanging because that's disrespectful, and any one of these people could be a patient or client in the future, right? So we want to treat them well in this interview. I also recommend if you have some kind of new patient offer, like a free exam or a free consultation as part of your normal marketing, that you give them a card that offers that. Because remember, again, even if they don't become a patient or client, even if they don't become an employee, they could potentially become a patient or client. And we want to have a good reputation amongst your community, right? The next thing we do is we actually take some time when they're not there to review their phone interview and how that went, right? Compare that to their resume, compare that to what the mole said about them, compare that to your own experience in the job interview with them, and really make sure we see a complete picture of everything that's led up to this. Ideally, in that circumstance, you would have 2 to 3 people remaining from which to make a decision, right? That's an ideal scene. Sometimes you're down to 1 person and that's that. But in an ideal world, we'd have 2 or 3 choices at this point. And at that point, we have our written tests. So we use 3 different written tests that we recommend. One of them is the potential analysis test. And this is really where we can actually detect that truly toxic person, the one who slid by everything else, the one that completely fooled you in the interview, completely fooled the mole because he knew to keep his mouth shut. And in fact, I've had clients argue with me about this test going, no, can't possibly. No, I'm hiring him. Sarah, I'm hiring him. And of course, as a client, you're my boss, not the other way around. So of course they go ahead and hire. And one for one, they've always come back and said, I'm so sorry we hired that person.
So that's actually really reassuring. You've actually, at the end of this whole process, just in case one of the really crazy ones, because I'll be honest, I'm not really afraid to hire someone who's unskilled in my own business. I'm speaking nice. Hopefully, practice owners feel the same way. I'm afraid to hire the crazy one,
right?
The one who is like, oh God, and it could turn into a lawsuit easy. And this person is kind of just and make the other staff mutiny on you or whatever. I mean,
right.
Those are the ones where you get in real trouble. I think you hire the wrong person. It's not a good fit. That's not a bad thing. But it happens.
Right.
I have learned to fear the crazy one, who looks great and just kill you dead, like a bad boyfriend or girlfriend that seemed great in the beginning. And oh no, now it's, a bad situation.
That's really where these types of personality tests come in handy. I always tell people, you can create your test results, right? Like you'll see these people and they're kind of like, here's the bottom, here's the top. They're kind of in the middle. And as an owner, you're kind of going, well, I don't know, seems a little low on the left. And I go, you know what? It's okay. This was how they felt today. But the one thing you can't fool about that test is the person who's just dragging along the bottom. You know what I mean? And it never turns out well for the practice. And honest to goodness, that never turns out well for that person either. So if you have any mercy in your heart at all, don't hire that person because they're not going to do well, right? And they have a life to live and a career to have as well. And, hopefully at some point they'll realize the error of their ways and they'll turn things around and their test will reflect that. right? If
Well,
you
I like the
used to be
objectiveness
a
of it.
bad, crazy person and you aren't anymore, the test is going to reflect that. So don't have any fear that it won't.
Okay, yeah. I was saying I like the objectiveness of it because, you sometimes just want to know for sure,
Right.
and I like you. Okay, here's an objective measurement of it. I don't because maybe I've fallen on this victim. I'm victimized myself on this by going, well, the person seems like a nice person. I'm sure I could work this out somehow. I
Right.
don't really have that many applicants. It's been so much work already. They seem to be the best of the ones that are left. And
I
you get
know.
reasonable, and you hire someone that you go, yeah. Only in hindsight do you go, yeah, that was bad. But if you have an objective measure that says, okay, you have to be this tall to work here, and they're only this tall, well, then you're like, okay, there
Right.
it is. Like, I love that idea. Stop me from making my own mistakes.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, because again, any good person wants to see the best in other people. So we have to have these objective, yardsticks for, like you said, measuring how tall the guy is. He's either cut it or not. The second test that we use is an IQ test, because that's the other thing you'll run into is this is a really great personality, but they just don't have the oomph. They don't have quite what it takes to succeed in this industry. And healthcare has a lot of big words, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of terminology, a lot of things the person has to, understand. And when they don't understand, it can be sometimes life-threatening for the patient. So it's important to hire someone who has a high enough IQ that they can do the job. Now, depending on the job, that may not be very high, right? So we do take that into account, depending on what position
in my
we're putting
place,
them
it can never be
into.
higher than mine. If you're smarter than me, I don't need that kind of pressure.
Sure. Yeah. And then
Below
the third
100,
one,
please.
the third test is actually an aptitude test, but I wish it were called the accident prone test, because that's really what I use it for the most, is detecting someone who just is going to be making mistakes left and right and just breaking things all over the place. And they're a trouble source for your practice, right? So that's the other one we use, and it's really,
So a
really
written
beneficial.
test that can actually, so you've got a written test that can detect whether someone is going to be making mistakes and having accidents and goofing up?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
It's a really wild
Wow.
test. Usually when a person sits down in front of it for the first time, they're a little bit like, what is this? But it's very interesting. It really gets to the bottom of that and finds the person who has got something going on in their life. Could be stress, could be something else, right? But you're not a therapist. You're not running a clinic for those people right now. You're a business, and you need to have staff who are not under those kinds of pressures and can actually perform. So that's what the test is about. So when you finish these tests, usually, like I said, you're down to 1, 2, or 3 applicants at this point. You have all of them take the test, and then you just choose the best test results at that point. And it's really that cut and dry. So we just remove all of the discriminatory practices and all of the personality, quirks out of it, and just make a very business-minded decision. And usually at that point, it works out well.
Wow, because you got an objective measure. You might have had whatever subjectiveness going on the way in, but at the end, it's objective.
That's right.
Hey, Jimmy did better than Tommy. On the test, we hired Jimmy. Okay, good.
Yeah,
that's great. Okay,
now, of course,
that's how you have. So you have that way. You have staff coming to your practice. I mean, that are predisposed to succeed. Then
that's right,
because they at least have the basic skills and they're not accident prone, and they can, remember what you said and have decent skills. I love that. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now, I had promised in this interview that we are going to do also like training and stuff, but I think I'm going to hold off on that right here because we're already going a little towards our hour. I'm going to tease the audience and say, okay, we'll have Sarah back to talk about how you can take this wonderful potential staff person you have and turn them into a superstar, loyal, mega competent team member that you can like leave important jobs to do and walk away and know they're going to get it done. Right. That's right. That's a whole other, I can tell it's a whole other discussion there.
We got a whole strategy for that one too, but I think I agree with you. I could take another hour at least to talk about that one. So let's let them them apply what they just learned, and then we'll come back. That would be great.
Yeah. So if you so if you're watching this, you end up with all these great staff, and you don't know how to do it, just give us a call. We'll find out. All right. So it's actually that. So look, you've clearly got more information than the average consultant. I'm gonna be honest. I've done shows. You've got more than just one trick or one idea. You seem to have a whole philosophy, a whole way of approaching it. How do people get in touch with you to find out more? Maybe you can help them out. I mean, I'm sure. I hope that if somebody's watching the video this far along, they got a problem with hiring, and I would love for them to either handle it themselves. That's cool. Or if they want your help, how can they reach you?
Yeah, they can just reach out through my website. It's sarahnicolenadler.com. Now, Sarah's got an H at it. So if you can't spell my name,
Well,
you're gonna have a hard time getting a hold of me. But
we'll
hopefully
put it
John will
magically
be
on the
nice.
screen
And,
right here.
yeah,
There it is. It's on the
link
screen.
there for you.
Okay, good. And they can find out more about you there, because I think that's look, my purpose here with the show and everything else is to help guys build their practices. And as I said, you can't do it without good staff.
Right.
And sometimes you need help. I mean, gosh, I've needed so much help in growing my own business and things. I know practice owners, we try to be that help. Like hiring is something you're never, ever, ever going to get away from. It's not something you do once. It's something you're continuously doing if you're growing and you're having any kind of success in the marketplace. Also, having a good hiring process lets you get rid of bad staff if you do get someone poor who's not doing a job, or they were great when they start doing badly. I've seen guys get stuck with staff that they just can't fire because they're not confident they can replace them in any reasonable amount of time. If there's a good process in place, an SOP that results start here, and in however many days or weeks you have that good replacement, then you're free of that. I think that is a great gift as a business owner to have. And I'm glad you could give that to them.
It only takes one bad apple to spoil a barrel, and keeping a hold of that toxic staff is probably one of the worst things you could do for your practice. And you know it, right? You know it. You just have to have confidence that you can replace them and that you won't be left with a gaping hole, right? That's sucking money and time out of your practice. So I understand that. And that's why we put this whole thing together.
Yeah, they often put the worst staff member on the front desk as like the lowest point, right? They say, oh, I've called into an office and you got the front desk person. They're kind of rude and kind of weird. I end up talking to the practice owner. I says, man, the person who answered the phone, she's kind of terrible. And they go, oh, I know. You should have seen when she was the office manager, like, why is she still on the front desk, man? Well, I don't know how to replace her. Like, oh, so all right, this will help a lot. This will help a whole lot. Okay, good. So folks, contact, if you guys want to skip, just push the easy button, contact Sarah and get some help. I'm sure she'd love to help you out and show you what you can do, and very least teach you the next steps. We'll have you on the next another show here in the future and show you how to turn those guys into a great team. And I'm sure you've got help for other areas of practice. I think this is going to be something we do on a regular basis, quite honestly, if you don't mind. All right, so Sarah, I understand you actually got a guide that people can download that'll cover a lot of these points, just like a free guide. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think, if you've listened to this podcast and hopefully you took copious notes, but I know what it's like, the notes get lost and you can't quite remember what I said and you don't want to listen to it 500 times. So I put together a downloadable checklist that just takes you step by step through the process. Obviously, I can't give you my tests because they're proprietary. So you'll have to reach out to me if you want to, get a little bit more help.
But all
to
the early
stuff,
basically all that earlier stuff, you got to, so the download covers all those earlier things.
Yeah, that's right.
Gorgeous. Okay, good. So we're going to put on the screen right here the place they can download that. There we go. But I guess over on your website too, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, good. So go download that. It's free help, free stuff, free help right there from a professional consultant. It's probably $10,000 worth of information you're getting for free right here. I mean, this is it. This is your reward for watching the end of the video here. All right, good. Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that.
No problem.